registered to vote in New York, because that's where, and she was already registered somewhere else, and she didn't fix that, but she didn't vote in both places. I mean, it's very unlikely that someone would do that. And it's especially, I wouldn't say impossible, because nothing's impossible, but to get enough people to do that, to vote more places, to make a difference, to make 2.8 million differences, which is what Donald Trump is looking for. Gee, that's a pretty tough assignment, and I think not very likely. So that's part of the piece of it. The more troublesome piece is that I think there's general agreement among outside observers that one of the things that this commission is designed to do, if it can't prove that there was enough voter fraud to change the popular vote, is to make some changes in our voting situation that will make it more difficult to vote. And in particular, what people of that persuasion are interested in doing are things like requiring documentary proof of citizenship. I mean, I remember that when I moved from Coeur d'Alene to here and I went to register to vote, I didn't have any, I took an electric bill with me and they let me register to vote. I didn't have to prove I was a United States citizen somehow, which I suppose I could do. I mean, I have a birth certificate, right? Somewhere, I mean, I was moving, it was in a box somewhere, or I could get one somehow but it's a lot more work to have to go get that, or your naturalization citizenship papers, or whatever it is that you have that is documentary proof of citizenship. No, your driver's license doesn't prove where you're a citizen. Your student ID doesn't prove where you're a citizen. All that proves is kind of, this is who I am, maybe, if you remembered to change your address on your driver's license when you moved, or if you didn't want to pay the amount for the new driver's license till it totally expired. Gee, I don't know who would have done that. So you just did change it till you absolutely had to. I'm probably the only one who would do that in the whole world. So documentary proof of citizenship makes it harder to register to vote. And it also, if you've ever requested a birth certificate, for example, you gotta pay money, you gotta fill out an online form, or, I mean, it requires a certain amount of, I would say, tenaciousness, as well as resources. That makes it harder for somebody who wants to vote. And especially makes it harder for somebody for whom English is a second language, or who haven't had the benefit of wonderful civic education in the school system, or that kind of thing. That's a lot harder. They want to have stricter voter ID laws. I would not want to make a comment about the lovely people at the fairgrounds who help me when I go to vote there, but I would tell you that I don't think there's a very close look at who the heck I am when I go there to cast my vote. And should I wish to claim I was somebody else who maybe was dead and hadn't removed themselves or been removed from the rolls, and I knew that address and exactly what precinct it was in, and went there at a rush time, I'm thinking there's a chance I probably could vote for that person if I were so inclined. So stricter, I mean, I guess that's true, but mostly it's just a pain for those of us who are trying to, at lunch hour, rush over there, get voted, get back home, pick up kids at daycare, be there when the school bus comes, whatever it is we gotta do. So having stricter voter ID just makes it tougher for people. And if you didn't have the right thing, or you didn't have time, you might just throw up your hands and say, this just isn't worth the aggravation to try to do. They want to make cutbacks to early voting. I mean, early voting is clearly a convenience for some people. So my mother lives at Bishop Place in Pullman. She's 93 years old. getting her to the polls is a major undertaking. Engaging in Washington's easy vote by mail before, where she can sit in her little place and contemplate at her leisure what she's doing, have somebody carefully read to her, this is what this says, and she doesn't see that well, show her where the right spot, this is all helpful to her. So not being able to vote early means all the studies make it pretty clear, fewer people vote, because it's just a convenience. And the other main thing they want to do is eliminate same-day registration, which has become, as we've said, equality and voting are equal. To my way of thinking, this is just me, if someone wants to go and vote, we maybe want to facilitate that process. And same-day registration facilitates that process. Yes, you can say that, and my mother would say this about me on many levels, that you should think ahead, you should do things ahead of time, you should plan carefully, you shouldn't have been writing this speech at 11 o'clock this morning, you should all of those, I heard her say it, I knew what she was telling me, but all these years later, I didn't listen. And I might not have listened about voting, but if I get to the darn polling place and I want to vote, it seems to me that it behooves us as a democracy to facilitate that process. But these folks want to make that at least difficult and maybe not possible. So clearly, from my way of thinking, the danger of this commission is that while we've been working to facilitate people's voting, this will make it harder. And why this is particularly an issue, in 2008, 64% of eligible voters voted in the presidential election. In 2012, 54.8% of eligible voters voted in the election. In 2016, 55% voted. Well, I returned, don't you just love historians, to my overarching notion of this. If equality equals voting and they're tied together, and we are convinced that being a democracy is important to us, we want more people to vote than 55% of those who can. In fact, we ought to be, to my way of thinking, doing whatever we can to encourage more people to vote. And the statistics make it very clear that the people least likely to vote are young people and minority groups. And so any of these changes that this commission, at least in theory, is thinking about suggesting, I've retired recently, which means I can really say whatever I want. That means that people who are more likely to vote for Democrats than Republicans are not going to be able to vote if these changes are put into place. And so that's what motivates this commission to want to do those things, especially they worry about immigrant groups who they think might want to vote. But it runs counter to what I see as the basic principle of who we are, and that is encouraging more people to vote. And that's one of the things that the League of Women Voters has made one of its most important, very laudatory tasks, for which I applaud you all, and thanks for coming.